Good evening, everyone. It's Rabbi Dr. Jack Cohen. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's special edition of Dating Shalom Bayis series. I'm going to divert today and go down a different path. Normally, you'd hear from me. I'm the toolbox guy. I usually give you very specific ways of how do's and don'ts of how to date and how to live in Shalom Bayis. However, tonight I'm going to go down a different path, and it's really justified because of what I see as a incredible movement lately of so many divorced people reaching out to me. Some of the cases that I've seen recently are absolutely horrific. One of my clients in his mid-40s is sitting Shiva, and his teenage daughters didn't even come to Menachem Avel him. Another client is miserable in 20 years of marriage, just reached out to me yesterday, and I'm sort of promoting her that she needs to leave that marriage. Another client is looking for assistance because he's been married already 3 times, and he asked me to call his second wife, his second ex, to see if she'd be interested, and she wants no part of him, and more to the fact she has an order of protection against him. And the horrible consequences and fallout that comes out from these things. So it got me to thinking, what's going on over here? Why are people making such terrible mistakes? Isn't anyone teaching people out there how to set up a kosher home, how to put together a great Jewish home? And I started wondering, and I said, I was fortunate. Well, since I was 12 years old, I had the pleasure to become a student of one of the Gedolei Hador, one of the greats of the generation, Rabbi. I think I've shown you this picture before. Here's a picture of myself and my rabbi, which is about 32 years ago. And since I was 12 years old, this man had a major impact on my life. He's been gone from the world 19 years, but his impact and influence on the world, on the Jewish world, is greater than ever, greater than when he ever was alive. As his Torah, or his pamphlet called Torah Savigdor, which is the pamphlet that goes out on the week's Parsha, which has tremendous diamonds and jewels for living, is dispersed throughout the world. And he has written extensively on how to develop and build a fantastic home. So tonight's presentation is not just for young couples who just got married and would like to chart a path for excellence in career of living. It's also for many of us who are already career parents and career fathers and mothers. And how can we even make our function better? How can we improve our game? By the way, if anyone, as I always put it out there, anyone needs my help in Shidduchim to get matched with anyone, if you'd like my help in terms of evaluating your relationship that you're in, or you have a Shalom Bayis issue, would like for me to give you a copy of the PDF of 100 questions to ask on dating, or would like help in putting together a top 10 list, or just want to schmooze about dating, or get help in improving your dating performance by training with me, you can call me or WhatsApp me or text me from anywhere in the world. I help people worldwide, and I love it, and I enjoy doing it. I especially enjoy hearing about people's relationships and getting them through those difficult decisions. I can be reached at 305-206-1916. Again, cell phone 305-206-1916. Best to WhatsApp me and let me know you're interested in speaking, or you can email me to drjackcohen18@gmail.com, drjackcohen18@gmail.com, or you can then as well go on to my website, drjackdating.com, send me a note through there, and I'll also answer you. If you'd like to help, I'm here to help you, and I very much look forward to doing whatever I can to assist you. Tonight we're going to digress from our usual how-tos and how to date effectively and how to have Shalom Bayis effectively, and learn how to develop a great Jewish home. We're going to learn some history tonight. We're going to learn some Jewish philosophy tonight. We're going to learn some hashkafa, some appropriate ideas of how to build our lives and how to put down the foundation for a great home so that we can have a career of great living and raise fantastic children. I'd like to start tonight's presentation by reading a very simple document that was put together by a very good writer in the field of dating, Gila Mandelson. She writes the following: I once met the perfect couple. Larry and Linda were on the same page in virtually everything in life. They agreed on travel, they agreed on politics, they agreed on diet, the environment, you name it, they were in agreement on. I never saw 2 people so made for each other. They seemed so happy together. They were enviable. They were the enviable couple. And guess what? Larry and Linda are now divorced. Because despite their amazing compatibility, why didn't their marriage last? Because neither Larry nor Linda possessed the idea or developed the idea within themselves of striving to improve themselves. And don't we know that Judaism is all about self-growth? It's all about becoming a better person than yesterday? Never did Larry or Linda ever see their marriage as a spiritual path, as a sacred bond to commit to and work on. And that's the mistake. When we don't set our sights on building or developing a marriage on a spiritual path, we're going to be headed for a serious crash. As a result, self-centeredness took over within Larry and Linda, leaving Larry and Linda more devoted to themselves than to the other, and as a result, their marriage just crumbled away. So what do we do about that? If we now understood that marriage and building a great marriage and a great Jewish home is a spiritual path, how do we get there? Well, let's Rabbi Victor Miller show us the way. And he writes, a successful Jewish home is one of the very greatest achievements in life. It's a service of Hashem and also one of the greatest benefits to our nation. It is also the place available to every Jew to exercise and develop their power of self-control. As we know that when a person gets married, self-control is going to be critical. You can't just do what you want and say what you want. And if you go ahead and do what you want and say what you want, you can rest assured you will fracture that home. You will destroy it. Nothing good comes easily. Such a home requires that the spouses earnestly desire to build a great home. However, it's not merely the result of good intentions. You don't just get lucky building a great home. It requires effort and wisdom. So tonight, I will grant you and give you and provide you with the wisdom. You then have to extend the effort. The wisdom of building a successful Jewish home must be learned, and we're going to learn that tonight. This brings us to the subject of the builder of the home. The wise woman builds her home, and the foolish woman tears it down with her hands. Chochmat isha banta beta. Shlomo HaMelech writes, the wise woman builds her home. One of the best opportunities to develop your potential for excellence is in the Jewish home. The Jewish home is a clinical laboratory where you can perfect your character. The wise woman builds her home. How beautiful are your tents, Yaakov, your dwellings, O Israel. Who said that? None other than one of the greatest opponents of the Jewish people, Bilam, the Rasha, Bilam, the wicked one, the one that was sent by King Balak while the Jews were in the desert after they had left Mitzrayim, after the Exodus. And he was sent by Balak to curse them. As he looked down and gazed from the top of the mountain and attempted to curse them, all he could do was utter blessing, utter praise for our great nation. And from him we understand that the tents of Yaakov, which is us, certainly includes the academies of Torah that we have. But more than that, he was referring to our homes, where men and women develop beautiful qualities. This is what got him excited. This is what made Bilam jealous, this Gentile prophet. He looked down at the tents of the Jewish nation as they were there encamped in the desert, and he saw a scene of beauty. He saw tzniut, he saw tznius, he saw modesty, he saw edelkeit, he saw refinement in the Jewish nation. And above all, he saw a commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it was in the first tents of the fathers, and so it was in a generation of the wilderness whose tents were praised by Balaam. And so it has continued down to our homes until today. To achieve the functions of the tents of Yaakov, it is essential that we must always keep three objectives in mind, constantly in mind, as we get ready or consider how to develop or strengthen our Jewish homes. These are fundamental. And number one, if you'd like to have a great Jewish home, you have to plan that the home become a top home. It's not going to get there by luck. It's got to be on top of your radar screen. As much as the Jewish home approximates a Mishkan or a Beis HaMikdash, which is the great temple, that's the measure of its success. So our paradigm is to try to develop a home which looks like a miniature Beis HaMikdash. Number two, our home is where a generation of children will be raised. The more the better, to serve Hashem. This in itself is a career for us as parents. And number three, our home. Our home is a place of kindness, of chesed, where we have to practice chesed, kind acts, and we have to teach that. Where the husband and the wife and the brothers and the sisters endeavor always to keep before their eyes the very great principle of making each other happy, and where we always work to strive to work on our selflessness. Opportunities. Everyone comes into this world for the purpose of utilizing opportunities that Hashem offers us to do mitzvos, and to perfect ourselves and to earn a greater and greater share in the next world. Because we have to squeeze the best out of our potential while we're here. None of us will ever become a king, and most of us will not be granted the power to influence over many people. What then is the area which is our maximum opportunity for doing good in this world, for achieving? How can we live most successfully and best exercise our free will, which is the rarest of gems that Hashem grants us? What did He give us in this world? He gave us free will. And now we have to exercise that free will and do good with it. Free will is only in this life, because in the next world there's no such thing as free will. We will be rewarded here in this world for how we used our free will, for the decisions that we made with our free will. The home is the empire which is offered to us being myself the king and my wife the queen, to every king and queen. And how they succeed in their little empire or their little home will largely be a measure of their success or otherwise in life and their afterlife. So you'll be graded mostly for the time you spent in your house, because that's the amount of time, the majority of time you're going to be found there in this world. For a man, the home is not the sole criteria of success, but for a woman, it's everything. Yet even a man finds in his home great opportunity for success, or otherwise than he could find elsewhere. His encounters with his wife and children are more numerous than his encounters with the rest of mankind, as Rabbi Miller would tell us in his 10 commandments of dating and marriage, that the concept of the mitzvah of of loving someone else as yourself is most exercised in your home and with your spouse and children than anywhere else in your life. And Rav Chisda tells us, never should a man impose excessive fear on his household. So a man cannot be a tyrant in his house. He tells us, as Rav Miller tells us, that the Gemara brings out from the Tana of Rav Chisda, a person has to be so careful, because they remind us of the story of Piglegish HaGivah, of the concubine of Givah, where a man was such a dominating, tyrannical individual that he chased his concubine out of the house. She eventually was abused by many people. Her body was cut up into 12 parts and sent back, and that led to a tremendous civil war between the nation and the tribe of Benjamin. So we have to be careful. A man must control himself, and he can't be a tyrant in his home. The home is your universe. On the subject of managing your house, the statement is made in the Gemara, for the wife and children depend on the man, and he depends on the one who spoke and caused the world to be. Just as a man is dependent on the Creator to manage his affairs, so should a man consider himself responsible for the happiness and success of his wife and children. That you as the man are responsible to ensure that your wife is happy and your children are happy. You hold the keys to their joy. That is the immense opportunity for achievement that is offered to a man in his home. And that is the enormous responsibility which rests on parents to make the home successful. For a man, his home is indeed a place of great achievement, but it's not his sole opportunity. Rav Chana bar Chalinai conducted an exceptional home that the Gemara tells us, where 60 bakers a day and 60 bakers at night prepared bread for the poor. Imagine 60 bakers working in a commercial kitchen in a house, both in the morning and night, 24 hours, constantly baking and producing bread to give out to thousands upon thousands and thousands of people. All day Rav Chana's hand was in his purse in order to give out money so that people don't have to wait to get the money from his hand. At night he placed bags of grain around the house for those who were ashamed to beg openly for bread. But for a woman, the home is the career par excellence. It's the natural setting where Hashem intended for her to gain perfection. The opportunities offered by the home and by the experience of motherhood can awaken the potential greatness of even an irresponsible and selfish girl. Because when you become a mother, you know you just can't live for yourself. You have to tend to your children. These opportunities are most fully utilized by the wise woman. Her loyalty to her husband and children can elicit greatness and can make her a great human being that no career can even remotely achieve. Her kindliness, her responsibility to her spouse and her children, her patience, her loyalty, her persistence, her industriousness, her selflessness, her creative talent, and similar gems of achievement are all squeezed to their top potential by using the home as a career and a laboratory to become excellent as a human being. From loyalty to her husband, she proceeds to loyalty to Hashem, to her people, and to the rabbis, and from love of her children to love of all. Whatever you do is a microcosm in the home. You'll be able then to take on a greater level to the outside world. These achievements of the wise woman are not just hers alone, for these qualities are reflected in her family as well. Whatever achievements she produces in her character by refining her character and making her character shine will then be bequeathed to her children. The Gemara, David HaMelech teaches us, Su merav v'aseh tov, turn away from evil and only do good. Turn away from evil and do good. Before we can even consider any positive achievements, we must first rid our homes of negative influence. One of the critical things that he used to teach us all the time, Rabbi Miller, was to be careful from the influence of the media, the TV especially. Therefore, Sarah, the wife of Avraham Avinu, insisted that Ishmael, who was the son from Hagar, be sent away. And she said to her husband, dismiss him from the house. Drive out this scoffer who doesn't believe in God. Because the character of your home will depend largely on what goes into your home. I remember years ago, a fine woman from the Syrian community who was a great teacher today said to me, and her children went to a fine yeshiva, one of the best. She says, just because those children or other children go to the same school as mine doesn't mean that the welcome sign is open at the front door to my house to them. Every child, every individual that comes in to influence your children needs to be screened. The Torah offers a general principle. You shall not bring an abomination to your house. The obvious meaning is an idol, which is forbidden. But we're really referring to horrible Western culture or toxified culture that can destroy our mindset and destroy our hashkafa. The stupid conformance to the television cult, Rabbi Miller writes, is one of the worst intrusions. These are not words enough, they're not words enough to warn of this evil, which is destroying many homes. before marriage, everyone to extract the commitment from their spouse, from their future mate, that their home will not be polluted by this form of degradation. I remember when I was going out, and I had grown up with several TVs in my house, I must reveal that, and when I used to go out with girls, one of the things I asked them, do you plan to have a TV? Because I've grown up with several, but I don't want one. And the woman who said yes, and eventually, plus other things, became my wife. So that's important. You don't want that thing in your home. The rabbi continues, a Jewish girl should be get married soon after or before graduation from high school. Every day after she leaves high school marks another step from idealism. From the street, from the office, and the secular schools have incredible effects on us, which increases from day to day. Just yesterday, I'm sitting with a post-Beis Yaakov girl who was a client of mine, 26 years old. I had to ask her nicely, please do me a favor. Can you pull your cardigan over a little bit closer to your neck? Because her tank top was showing and there was skin all over, which was like shocking that she was wearing a tank top. But this is what happens. Right after you graduate is when you're most idealistic after high school. Surely if you get the privilege to go to seminary, go for it. But we have to be careful. As the years go on, you're not getting married, you're being influenced and polluted by the Western media. And I see it all the time with girls that were post-Beis Yaakov graduates that are 25, 26, 27. You see this steady decline. So you have to be cautious. The rabbi is absolutely right. You should get married as soon as possible after high school. That's very important. Women and girls must be properly attired even in their homes. They should dress b'tznius. We therefore understand how much Hashem hates an army where women are present, no matter in what capacity, and how much he abhors the synagogue which allows for mixed dancing, or where women attend weddings in indecent clothing and they come looking like they have their nightgowns on, or where the seating is circular so where men can mix with women. So we have to be careful with that as well. Let's analyze one of the greatest homes, the home of Abraham and Sarah. The best of all models is the first Jewish home. It wasn't a palatial residence. It wasn't even a house. All it was a tent. The home of Abraham and Sarah became the place where many people ate. Thousands upon thousands of people were fed meals. And especially where the divine rested, where the Shekhinah rested. Abraham and his household were extremists in the way they conducted hospitality to wayfarers. They wouldn't let a person go by. They wouldn't let anyone pass their tent without coming in for a meal and acknowledging that God was the beneficiary of the meal. And they served Hashem even in material matters with supreme devotion. So we need to learn from their prime example. Avraham and Sarah created with painstaking care a miniature sanctuary so beautiful that Hashem declared that he was forsaking all the spaces of the universe and bringing his divine presence to rest right in their little tent. There was no ceiling beams in their home. There were no floors. It was small enough to fold together and transport on the backs of camels. That was their tent. It was mobile. That was their home. It was a mobile home. But Avraham and Sarah lived so nobly that they transformed their little tent into a miniature great temple, Beit HaMikdash. A man and a woman, if they prove worthy, have the Shekhinah between them. The Gemara tells us in Sotah. When a man and woman are united in the service of Hashem and they live nobly and generously and respect each other, the Shekhinah of the divine presence descends and becomes part of their home, part of their marriage. This was exemplified by Abraham and Sarah on the highest level. They were not great because they were progenitors of Israel, but they became the progenitors of Israel because they were so great. It was their greatness that allowed them to be the forebearers of this great nation of Klal Yisrael. Without any teachers, Abraham and Sarah chose the true God and walked in his ways on their own volition. From their excellence of their free will, they volunteered to live a great, noble, refined life, unequaled in any subsequent family. And at that time, the Spirit of Hashem no longer hovered, but it came to rest squarely in their tent upon their home. Because Abraham and Sarah, of their own minds and their own free will, built the noblest home in history, and in such a manner that their children and grandchildren emulated them. Therefore, the sanctuary was erected as a replica and an echo of the greatness which they created. Now, it will reward us to study that house. Let's study Abraham and Sarah's house and prize every piece of information about it. Everything that Abraham and Sarah did was holy of holies. For they walked with Hashem and you were devoted to his will. And when you want to be successful at something, we need to look to role models of success and try to emulate their life. The home should be a place of tefillah. Let's go on with Rabbi Avigdor Miller's wisdom. What should go on in a Jewish home? Well, to start with, it should be a place of prayer. Just like the sanctuary is called Biti Bet Tefillah, my house is a house of prayer. So your home should be a home of prayer. If you come to my home, Hashem says, I'll come to your home. if you come to the synagogue, you don't return alone, for you bring along something that remains in your house. In addition, the children say, did Abba return from the synagogue yet? So attendance at synagogue should be a fundamental principle in any Jewish home. Or the mother inquires to the children, did Abba return home from synagogue yet? It becomes a central focus of the home. That's how the home should be. The first thing that they should do in the home is, did everyone daven yet? And as well, the mother is a symbol of prayer at every Jewish home. She is too busy with many matters to be able to pray long tefillahs, but the Jewish mother has always been devoted to prayer, sometimes even more than men. Men have specified duties of times when they have to daven, shachrit, mincha, arbit, and amounts of prayer, and sometimes they hurry through their long davening in order to get to work. But whatever the Jewish mother prayed was always from the heart. Whenever she had a few moments, she turned to her book of prayers or Tehillim book, where she found a prayer for every eventuality. On getting up, she could pray. On going to bed, she prayed. For an unwell child, she had a prayer for it. For a child to remain on the right path, she found a prayer for that. That her husband should earn a good livelihood, a woman could find a prayer for that. That Hashem should help his people, the nation of Israel, she would pray for that as well. So a Jewish woman has incredible abilities, and as our rabbis tell us, 9 out of 10 powers of conversation were given to women. So when a woman davens, she can do amazing things. Children in a Jewish home see that their mother's Tehillim is well thumbed and marked with many tears which she shed when speaking to the Holy One. And so it's important. And that is what Sarah did in her little sanctuary. And this was one of the reasons that our home was so ennobled. When lighting the Shabbos lights, the mother did not merely fulfill the minimum obligation, but a Jewish mother prays that her children and her grandchildren should illuminate the world like the Shabbat lights, that there should be Talmidei Chachamim, Jewish scholars, there should be tzaddikim, righteous people, that the daughter should prove worthy of being wed to such Jews. When Shabbat was departing, the Jewish mother sat in the gathering dusk and prayed the famous prayer to Hashem that He should protect His people Israel and give His blessings for the week to come. Unlike the men who prayed solely in Hebrew, a Jewish woman's prayers were in heartfelt, their lashon, whatever that was, Yiddish or English or Hebrew or Persian, Farsi, whatever it may be, French, English. The daughters witnessed, the daughters of the Jewish mother, and they grew up with a closeness to God because they wanted to emulate their mother, who prayed so nobly to Hashem. And thus, Jewish homes became homes of prayer. In the Jewish home, not long ago, it was the practice that children recited all their brachot or blessings in a loud voice. When they prepared to eat, they all washed their hands, while the mother stood over them like a rabbi in a yeshiva, as each child pronounced the blessing of Al Nitlat Yadayim for raising your hands, so that each word was heard, and no one was cheating. They came to the table where each one said the brachav hamotzi, the bracha that we say for bread, and the words resounded on all sides in loud and enthusiastic voices, as everyone thanked Hashem for the morsel of bread. Around their holy table they sat, and they thanked God after eating by benching Birchat HaMazon. The father would recite the blessings from the special Big Siddur, which he used in honor of such occasions, although everyone knew the entire item by memory. The father would do Mayim Achronim, wash his fingers and dry them after eating the meal, and he took his Siddur and said the words, and everyone sensed that their table was a table where Hashem was being served, that their table was indeed a holy table. Staka. The table can also serve as an altar or mizbeach where one opens his checkbook to write checks to yeshivas, to write checks to orphanages, to write checks to worthy causes, to so many wonderful Jewish worthy causes. And also the table serves for numerous opportunities to be able to feed guests passing through town who could use a good meal. The yeshiva student who studies Torah away from home is often invited to people who come over, who invite yeshiva students over to come in for a meal. To the point where some Jews, when it was time for them to get ready to prepare to leave this world, requested that their tables be turned into boxes for their burials so that the table would go with them to testify for them, that table would serve as a witness, that table was used to serve thousands upon hundreds of thousands of meals where Hashem's name was said in a blessing and in benching, where numerous mitzvot were taken, where numerous guests were fed, where many checks were written to tzedakah, where numerous mitzvahs took place on that table. Similarly, the Jewish cobbler or tailor was sometimes buried in a box made from the boards of his work table to testify to his honesty towards his customers. A child's mind is close to money, the Gemara tells us in Masechet Gittin. An adult who is enamored of money demonstrates that his mind has not matured. Indeed, children should be taught not to waste anything and to save their money, but they must also be taught the habit of giving tzedakah, of giving charity. When a child learns to give part of his money to charity, he's being thereby accustomed to the awareness that there's another world besides the world that we're living in. There's a world to come. The child should be told, you're not giving away your money, but you're putting it into the bank of the afterlife, where it's safest and brings the greatest returns, and it'll be waiting to pay you back. Every Jewish home should have charity boxes, or as we call them, pushkas. There was a time, not too long ago, when every home had charity boxes nailed on the kitchen door on both sides, up and down, representing all the yeshivas of Yerushalayim, of Israel. Once or twice a year, an elderly Jew came for each box. I know we have this with the Rami Bar-Lanes pushkas. My wife and I have these boxes, and as soon as they fill up, we call the office. Man comes, he cleans it out, and we start the process again. And when a man would unlock his key and empty the contents on the table, and when the contents were on the table not long ago, it was a ceremony whereby the children saw the support of Torah in their home, because all those pennies and all those nickels and dimes that the father and mother and the children would deposit into pushka boxes until it filled up, now they saw that the box was full. The man would come and open it up and deposit all the contents on the table, and they saw where the money was going. It was going to support Torah. So these children were conditioned that it was critical as a Jew to support Torah. The mother and children stood and watched as the old man counted the pennies or the nickels, even at dimes, which were a rarity. He wrote out a receipt and with his little hammer nailed the box back in its place, and the family felt that they were in contact with Israel and Yerushalayim and its Torah scholars. The Jewish mother always dropped something into the pushka before lighting the Shabbat candles. It's a great mitzvah and a great minhag, and her daughters learned to emulate her. Which you are the prime role models as parents. Thus the child grew up with a sense of responsibility for helping yeshivas, both yeshivas and Beis Yaakovs. Later, the child answered letters and appeals of yeshivas throughout the world. You know, we all often get letters from yeshivas and appeals from yeshivas around the time of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and throughout the year, especially in Pesach. It's this training that the child saw in his home that conditions him to want to give tzedakah in large amounts when he grows older, because it's impressed in his mind that he saw that his parents taught him to give tzedakah in the house to these pushkas. Thus, the Jew always lives for the world to come, and he views his function, all events of his life, as preparation for an eternal career. The light of the rising sun of the afterlife casts a glow on the Jew in this world, and his path in life was already illuminated by great idealism and happiness of Hashem Shekhinah residing in his home. Another area that we need to be very important that we need to be careful about. As important as all these matters are, we come now to that which is outstanding amongst all the characteristics of Jewish homes. On each doorway of a Jewish home, there's a mezuzah, which we kiss going in and going out, containing 2 paragraphs of the Torah. As we pass the mezuzah in and out, the mezuzah is intended as a reminder to us of certain principles. In each paragraph, it tells us that a Jew must teach the words of the Torah to his sons, so that they'll speak in the Torah when sitting in the house and when they're going on the road. When they get up and when they go to sleep, they should speak Torah. This is a message that in the house, the Torah must be studied, and this is repeated in the paragraphs of the Shema daily. When we conclude the Shema, we declare, true and positive and established and enduring and just and trustworthy and beloved and cherished and delightful and sweet and fearsome and mighty is this matter upon us. So we have to be always cautious. Even if one studies in a house of study or Bet Midrash, his home must be a place of Torah. Indeed, the Jewish home must resound with the voice of Torah. The house where the words of Torah are heard is a house which will never be destroyed, the Torah tells us, or the Gemara tells us in Mesechet Eruvin. At work, one attempts to earn a livelihood. But at night and on Shabbat or Shabbos, you build your house with Torah by preparing your Divrei Torah in advance, thereby transforming your home into a miniature Beis HaMikdash. Indeed, the father and the sons may be in the yeshiva at night, but by continuing to study on Shabbos and other times when they have off in the home, that's how you have to build your Torah home. It should be an ideal in every Jewish home to buy Sfarim and make a considerable Torah library. Even if you're not a Torah scholar, let him acquire prestigious looking books and line the walls of his home with Torah bookshelves. I'll never forget when I was a teenager and I grew up in a young adult minyan on Shabbat in one of the great synagogues of Brooklyn, Sharet Zion, and our Rabbi, the Rabbi of our minyan, went on to become a great Torah scholar and big tzaddik. Rabbi Yosef Harari Raful always told us, you should buy Sfarim and line your libraries with them. Even if you don't open them, you want the Sfarim in your home. It's important. Let the people of that house daily see collections of gemara on the shelves, at least from the outside. Don't just say, oh, I don't need to buy Sfarim or holy books. We have them in the synagogue. No, buy them, even if you don't use them. It has an immeasurable effect and influence on the home. Today, when many people have expensive furniture, They for sure certainly should have beautifully bound sets of Gemara and Talmud and other books of Torah. Go out and buy beautiful books of Chumash and Tanakh and Navi and all types of commentaries, for they are an adornment which deserves no less attention than the nicest sofa and rugs. Even in a home that doesn't study Torah, maybe a grandchild one day will become a very religious boy. How often do we see grandchildren that are B'nai Torah of highest quality coming from homes that were not religious at all? You never know where that boy was influenced. He might have opened one book in his grandfather's house and he was enamored by it, and as a result he went ahead, became interested in Torah, and now he did tshuva, and now he builds a whole great Jewish home and a legacy begins from him. So it's important that we line our shelves with Sfarim. Go out there and buy the nicest looking Talmud sets. It's so important. Now let's talk about Shabbos or Shabbat. We come now to the joyous subject of Shabbat. In the Jewish home, the Shabbat or Shabbos is the day of delights, which begins on Thursday and Friday with the delectable aroma of baking and cooking. What is a Jewish home without the mouth-watering fragrance that precedes and announces the approach of Hashem's holiest day? As one passes through a Jewish street on the afternoon before Shabbos or Shabbat, he's greeted by the delightful aura of fish cooking, and he's reminded of the joyous times in the past which are being prepared for the people of Hashem, who will be seated around their happy tables to enjoy the sacred pleasures of Hashem's day and to sing the songs of joyful thanks for Hashem having created this world and for the election of Klal Yisrael as His people. From all the nations of the world, He chose us, which we always signify on Shabbat. If there's an opportunity for home baking, it's so much better than buying from a bakery. The fragrance of the chalis that are baking in our ovens is like the ketoret, or the fine fragrance, incense, which was offered in the sanctuary on a daily basis. So it's important that we understand what Shabbat's all about and we utilize it to its maximum. With a generous hand, we prepare for this greatest of days, so the Shabbos table be laden with delicacies. Don't worry, spend on Shabbos. Whatever you spend to enhance the glory of the day will give him back to you, as the Gemara tells us on Shabbat, that whatever you spend on Shabbat, you get back. And add a touch to the holy joys of the day is to sing Shabbat songs, or Zmiros, or Zmirot, so that all the guests should join heartily. Open wide your windows to allow the beautiful music of these melodies to be wafted out, and perhaps to enter the hearts of Jews that are not religious, who will hear this singing and will have some regret and remorse that they're losing out on the happiness and achievement. I'll never forget how Rabbi would tell us, if not for keeping Shabbos, how many Jews would die of heart attacks? Imagine, without having a day that you told you have to rest, you'd go to work, you'd work 7 days a week. What kind of a life is that? The heart could not take the pressure, and how many more people would die? Shabbat's a guarantee, is a life insurance policy for long life. On Friday before sundown, all the men should go to receive the Shabbat, Kabbalat Shabbat, when they return from the house of prayer, accompanied by the angels which accompany them home, and also the Shabbat guests, the holiness, the Kedusha, and joy of the holy day, enter the home with them. The mother and the daughter stand arrayed in their Shabbat's clothing and greet those who bring the Shekhinah, or the divine presence, into the home. On this great day, when the home is most prominent in the lives of the family, the wise mother can achieve a spirit of holiness that will pervade her sanctuary for a long time. Let's talk about Yom Tov, or holidays. There's one coming right up, so I'd like to discuss it, that being the holiday of Purim. How among the opportunities for joy in a Jewish home can we omit the subject of Purim? This day must be made outstanding. What a tragedy that so many people allow Purim to not be celebrated properly, whereas Thanksgiving is conspicuously celebrated. Let Thanksgiving be unnoticed. If relatives wish to visit, reply that you already made plans for the day. But Purim must be made memorable by feasting and family rejoicing. In addition to synagogue observance and Purim mitzvos, a joyous Purim gives the heart merriment, which is a continual feast. All year, if you celebrate Purim the right way, you'll have celebration in your heart the rest of the year. We must apply ourselves to the career of adorning the home with as many holy festivities and Torah celebrations. We must celebrate Pesach and Shavuot the right way, Sukkot, Purim, Chanukah, Tu B'Shvat, which we just celebrated, Lag BaOmer, Isru Chag, Rosh Chodesh, in order to create an atmosphere of serving Hashem b'simcha, with happiness, so that our home is regarded as a place of joy. And as a result, children raised in such homes will never run away, will never go off the derech. Poets and painters, even those remote from Judaism, chose as their theme the Seder night and the Jewish festive tables, for in their hearts there still glowed the beautiful sanctity of the Jewish family. What the Rabbi is telling us, even if a person was estranged from Judaism, was disconnected completely, and if he was a painter, he'd paint the scene of the Seder all the time, or Shabbat table. The true Jewish home possesses a powerful attraction, which is our duty to enhance to the best of our ability. We've got to constantly work to improve the sanctity and beauty of our Jewish homes. This is the vow that we made as Jews at the splitting of the sea. And we said, Ze Eli ve'anvehu, this is my God, I shall adorn him. And I'll adorn my God by observing the mitzvos with beauty and joy and happiness. And I'll keep the Torah and I'll study it. The Torah is the true beauty, and whatever external beauty we impart to it is never as much as it deserves. In view of this unending campaign of the nations to step on Jews in Judaism, aided greatly by disloyal Jews, it's of supreme importance to hold high the banner of true Judaism and be proud to be Jews. You've got to show your children you're proud to be Jewish. And you have to expend the greatest effort on demonstrating the beauty and joy of Torah living. As much as possible, you've got to praise the righteous ones. You got to praise our rabbis. You got to praise our gedolim. As much as possible, the household atmosphere should be saturated with personalities and events of our great past. Invite rabbis to come over to eat by your tables. From the earliest days, the children should hear only of Avraham Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, Yaakov Avinu, Sarah Imenu, Rivka Imenu, Rachel Imenu, Leah Imenu, and should learn to love these people of our nation. These were the forefounders of our nation. The stories of heroism, of their beautiful qualities of character and wisdom of their personalities should be reviewed again and again. The examples of Rabbi Akiva, who recited the Shema with fervor when he was being tortured to death, as they took a hot iron comb and peeled off his flesh. Of Hillel, whose humility was put to the test again and again, yet he refused to succumb and yield to anger. Of the 400 Jewish children who drowned themselves in the sea to prevent the Romans from using them for shameful purposes. And of countless, so many Jews who died al Kiddush Hashem to sanctify God's name. These are the models that we have to hold up to our children. We have to tell them these stories. Teach your children to love our heroes, to love our great ones, to love our Torah leaders, the Torah leaders of today, to love all observant Jews, and above all, to love Hashem. It should therefore be an unalterable principle in the Jewish home to praise the tzaddikim, the righteous ones of our people, and to relate the greatness of Talmidei Chachamim, of Jewish scholars. That's so important. In accordance with the principle, a man becomes that which he praises. The family which is enthusiastic over Talmidei Chachamim, our Jewish scholars, will eventually produce Torah scholars of their own in their family. The father and mother should never tire of speaking highly of those who study Torah, of Rabbanim, of rabbis, of yeshiva men, of gedolim, and similar heroes of our people, past and present. The example of the righteous servant of Hashem should be held up as an ideal before the family, and their mouths should be full of naught but praise for those who represent this ideal. On the walls of the Jewish home should hang portraits of our tzaddikim, of our rabbis and our great ones. A home becomes transformed when the walls display the likeness of the Rambam or the Vilna Gaon or of Avadia Yosef, of many great rabbis. So that's important as well. Let's talk about the role of husband and wife in building a great Jewish home. The role of the wife must be distinguished from that of the husband. It's a false dream that a husband and a wife can walk hand in hand through life sharing the same interests. This mirage, because it is never attained, causes unnecessary disillusionment. Men do not share all their experiences with their wives, be it in business, warfare, or Torah study. David did not sit with Bathsheba when his harp sang the glory of Hashem, or when he prepared the plans to build the Beit HaMikdash, nor did Yeshayahu receive his prophecy in the company of his wife. Each has a separate sphere of interests according to the functions for which they were created. It is true that his wife was the harp which awakened the glory of Rabbi Akiva, that being Rachel, and made him great. But Rabbi Akiva traversed the path to greatness for 24 years alone, not together with his wife. However, the husband and wife are together in the three fundamental ideals of the Jewish home. In these three areas, the wife can be a full partner, and these are her opportunities to excel and grow great. Whatever is said of the wise woman is also true of the wise father, and even of the wise child. And that is the following. There cannot be two kings. The marriage relationship is twofold. The wife is co-captain. This is not only Jewish, but natural. There can be no harmony when there are two commanders. Without this indispensable condition, the home is going to fall into complete disarray. Arrogance is unbecoming to a woman. Number two, the second but equally essential foundation of a great Jewish home. A man must always demonstrate respect for his wife. This is the way of Jewish men who honor and support their wives, as stated in the Jewish marriage contract, otherwise known as the Ketuvah. He honors her more than his own body, as the Gemara tells us in Yevamos 62b. And a man must always be careful with his wife's honor. Baba Mitzvah 59a. The man is the captain, but the wife is the first mate whose counsel is honored and respected. The wife cannot be made a doormat. She need not beg for money. She deserves some assistance in the household chores, and the husband must side with her against anybody who speaks against her. He must express frequent appreciation to her and always give her words of encouragement. And the husband should remember his wife from time to time with gifts, big or small. Husband and wife should always say please and thank you to each other, and should never forget always to be polite to each other. Now let's talk about the wife. It's in the sphere of the home that the wife is given special assistance from God. Greater is the assurance which is the Holy One, blessed be, gave to women more than to men. Men have more tests to undergo and more complicated responsibilities in this world. In addition, men are more readily motivated by the desire for glory and honor and covered, whereas the tranquil women and their daughters seek no fame and don't compete with anyone. The Jewish wife and mother can more readily achieve her destiny through her home, and she can most successfully find favor in God's sight by cherishing feminine virtues of humility, patience, peace, and trust in Hashem's providence. This does not imply that she accomplishes this without effort, because man was born to toil. Adam la'amal yulad. Is it not a time of service to men in this world? The wisdom of women which builds the home must be learned and constantly reviewed and intensified. But it's essential that the woman seek to excel solely in the woman's sphere, but not in the world of men. When she enters the competitive and ambitious sphere of males, the divine assurance to woman is no longer valid and protective to her. Thus, when the daughter of Israel toils to prepare the Shabbat wonderful treats alone in the privacy of her kitchen, she may glorify the fact that after the Shabbat, nothing of Shabbos, nothing visible remains of her achievements except the utensils which she must wash, empty pots and pans. Indeed, the husband and children should applaud the mother's cuisine with generous praise. As Rabbi would always tell us, the first of our Torah that a person should say Friday night is how fantastic the chalis are and how great the fish tastes. Yet her self-sacrifice and even heroism are sometimes unfortunately quickly forgotten, unlike men's achievements, which are physically more enduring and visible to others. But this very anonymity of the devoted servants of God who walk in His path is what makes women great. Actually, the home provides a field of varied activity. There are numerous forms of endeavor, each of which brings us to perfection. Among the greatest is the achievement of the household of Torah learning. How do women gain merit? By having children study in their shul. By sending the children out to study in the shul or in the house of study, women get tremendous merit. And by waiting for their husbands until they return home from the house of study. The wise mother is a builder of great men. Adam called the name of his wife Chava, which means the giver of life, because Chava was the mother of all living. The ambition to have as many children as possible is the fundamental quality of the builder of the home. Give me children, said Rachel to Yaakov, else I am dead. For that was her purpose in life. Rachel saw her only purpose in life was to have children. What is a woman here for if not to have children? Rachel yearned for as many children as possible, and therefore she named her son, the first son, Yosef, meaning Hashem should add another son. She named her first son with a request for more children, because that's what she believed in, and that she knew that the principal reason that a woman is put into this world is to have kids. Rachel and Leah vied with each other to have more children, and of them it was said, like Rachel and Leah, who together built the house of Israel, the number of children is the measure of the Jewish mother's success. But in addition to the glorious happiness of a large family, the great women of the Jewish people always strove to build their children into great personalities. As our history demonstrates, David said, Ani avdecha ben amatecha. He beseeched Hashem in his praises in Tehillim, I, Hashem, I am your servant, the son of your handmaid. David had a great father. Indeed, Yishai was considered one of the 4 people in the world who never sinned. And he had thousands of people following him home when he came home from giving a lecture on Torah. Yet here we see that David invokes the merit of his mother as a reason for Hashem to accept his prayer. He didn't come on to the merits of his father, who was considered sinless. No, when David puts up a request because he needs something from Hashem, he comes on to the merits of his mother. In reality, David was invoking not his mother's merit, but not just his merit, but his mother's merit. In both expressions he requests, he says, Hashem, I'm your servant. I'm the servant, the son of your handmaid. This means first, I'm your servant, and it's for this merit that I entreat you. Second, why am I your servant? Because your handmaid, which is my mother, served you well, Hashem, and performed a good job on me, and made me into a great servant to you. Thus, David is in both cases invoking, help me, Hashem, because of what my mother did to turn me into someone who became a great servant to you. We see from this that a great man has a great mother behind him, as was the case with hundreds of thousands of Jews in every generation. No biographer could possibly do justice to this subject. And therefore it wasn't attempted until very recently. Our nation was always busy producing heroes and heroines in multitudes. And therefore we need not be surprised that in the case of David's mother, we discover that she was a servant of Hashem, although the Torah says absolutely nothing about her. We don't even know her name. That's how anonymous she was. Yet she produced one of the greatest personalities in the Jewish world, that is David HaMelech. David is called servant of Hashem, and in more than 30 other instances, an exceptional title which great men did not attain. Even the eminently virtuous Shaul HaMelech didn't get that title of servant of Hashem. All this David got and he gained because of his mother, who he called Hashem's maidservant. She trained him in character and in outlook on life, and to serve Hashem with greatness. Therefore David said, Hashem, I'm your servant, the kind of servant who was produced by a master artisan, like a quality product fashioned by a craftsman who makes only the best. Hannah, the mother of Shmuel, the prophet, is one of the outstanding personalities of the scriptures. We know the famous story. Hannah was barren, had no children. Her co-wife Penina had 10 children. Hannah came to the Mishkan and prayed to Hashem and offered that fantastic tefillah called Tefillat Hannah. Her son is among the greatest, Shmuel. He was considered equal to Moshe and Aaron combined. This unusual woman was at first childless. She longed for a son to serve Hashem, and she vowed that if Hashem would grant her desire, she would not keep him home to enjoy him, but she'd give him away to Hashem's service. We may be sure that Shmuel's mother did not abandon him. She reared him for 3 years and then brought him to Cohen, but we shall not err if we assume that she continued to influence him. Therefore, we may consider Shmuel as a product of another great woman. King Shlomo, King Solomon, was the source of a large part of the wisdom which is our great national heritage and possession. This great man achieved much more than the books of Proverbs, of Mishlei, Shir, Shir, and Koheles which he authored. In addition to the innovations in which he taught us the laws of how to put up an eruv and the hand washing which he and his rabbis introduced, there were certainly other practices and attitudes which Shlomo HaMelech injected into our nation's consciousness. But these were practiced and repeated so constantly that afterward the people forgot the originator. This is the lot of all very great men, that the public comes to regard their contributions as part of the Torah heritage, and no one remembers the originator. But if we study Mishlei, which is one of his magnum opus of Shlomo HaMelech, Proverbs, we can discern what a great share the mother of Shlomo had in shaping his personality. Twice Shlomo HaMelech admonishes us, don't forsake the Torah of your mother. It is certain that his mother Bathsheba had incredible impression on him and turned him into the incredible personality that he became. Chazal tell us Bathsheba lashed and admonished her son against abandoning himself to wives and to the pleasures of the banquet table. And she told him, don't give your strength to women, which is what he wrote in Mishlei 31:3-4, because wine is not for kings. The Torah of a mother, which Shlomo speaks about, was certainly an important part of his background. Bathsheba, his mother, the wife of David, his father, was a distinguished personality, and Shlomo was a product of this great mother and her great character and her great devotion to Hashem. We know that Yitzchak Avinu was under his mother's tutelage and obeyed her counsel. We must consider the role of Sarah Imenu in the home in which Yitzchak was reared. We might conjecture that she provided the model of virtuous character and that she was a good teacher. But let's hear the words of the Torah, where it says Sarah saw the son of Hagar laughing, that being Ishmael. It is not stated merely Ishmael laughed, but it is noted that Sarah saw. She looks well to the ways of her house. Therefore Sarah demanded of her husband Abraham, drive out this scoffer from our home. Sarah looked well, like a conscientious rabbi of a yeshiva watches lest someone should doze off or become ensnared in time-wasting conversation. When she saw one student of that holy yeshiva laughing, she went to Abraham, who was the head of the yeshiva, to have the laughter expelled. A true Jewish home is like a true sanctuary. It's full of cheer and trust in God, but it's not a place where scoffers sit and enjoy. It was under her watchful eye that Sarah Imenu was able to raise Yitzchak and to turn him into the great personality that he became. Rivka too counseled her son Yaakov. She said, listen to my voice, leave here, go get yourself a wife from the town of my brother Lavan. And he went and listened to her. We can therefore perceive what an influence the wisdom of Sarah and Rivka had on the course of our nation's history. Let's talk about attitudes, how important it is to have a good attitude and to shape the attitudes of your children. As parents, we have a lot of teaching to do. It was because David was trained by his mother to see the beauty in the world that David was able to recognize the kindliness of Hashem. David's mother taught him to admire the sun and the rain and the wind and the trees. She opened her mouth with wisdom, right? And the teaching of Hashem's kindness was on her tongue. From his mother he learned to be grateful to Hashem, who made the sun and rain and wind and trees. And this we see how critical as David exemplifies the beauty of this world through the praises that he offers to Hashem. It was because of this kind of training that David was chosen as God's sweet singer. But in most homes, it's unfortunate. The elements of weather are excuses for unhappiness. This attitude of pessimism is actually taught to our children. It enters into their bones and they remain unhappy pessimists throughout their lives. When rain or snow comes and the mother or father groans and complains, "Oh, snow is coming. Oh, it's terrible. It's raining today." Morning, afternoon, and evening, they speak against these wonderful blessings of Hashem. These preachings against the rain and the snow. They lay the foundation for the child's mentality and create their outlook on life. Whenever rain or snow comes, they'll have an unhappy day, because their thoughts are those that were implanted in the beginning of their lives by their parents, who always correlated a rainy day or a snowy day as a bad day. The mother must frequently ask herself, what kind of home do I have? Is it a place that develops unhappy attitudes, resulting in sickness of the body and sickness of the soul, or sadness or complaining and irritability? Or is it a place of cheerfulness, of liking everyone? The home is a prime source of disease, believe it or not. The family is one of the greatest causes of illness. Most heart attacks are occasioned not by a troublesome employee or customers or business competitor, but by a fight or an altercation in the home. Anger, envy, anxiety, jealousy, discouragement, resentment, hatred, and sorrow bring physical suffering and serious illness. Just yesterday, I was on a WhatsApp video with a client, a 42-year-old woman, who shows me a surgical scar on her neck. And she says to me, I had surgery for a stenosis, an artery right here. And why that rarely happens to a woman that age, all from stress of fighting all the time with her husband. Surgeon told her it's almost impossible that someone that young should have a blockage in that area, in that carotid area. This is called the carotid artery. But indeed, in this 42-year-old woman, she had that, all because of constant fighting. And yes, the rabbi is absolutely right. Most of our problems originate from the home, because we don't know how to get along with each other. And illness can follow altercation just like that. A very large part of such eventualities can be traced to people and inept parents who tear down their house with their own hands. Most domestic difficulties are a result of a failure to follow the words of Pirkei Avos, I found nothing better for the body than silence. We need to work on that. When a mother frequently complains of her aches and pains, when there's bickering in the home, when there's dissatisfaction, the holiness of the home is dispelled. The wise woman who builds her house is one who has learned what not to say. And when she chooses to speak, she speaks purposefully and optimistically and positively. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the Torah of her kindness is on her tongue. Ladies and gentlemen, that was part 1 of how to build a great Jewish home. Join me next week for part 2. Perhaps we may even have a part 3 as we learn the foundations of how to build a fantastic Jewish home. Because you know what? If you don't learn from the Torah, you're doomed to make mistakes and to repeat them. So again, if you need my help in any way in dating with Shalom Bayis, please feel free to reach out to me from anywhere in the world, 305-206-1916, or you can just send me an email to drjackdating.com. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.